Well, to me, anthropology is everything. I mean, it's anything from the culture that dictates what we do every day to the languages that we communicate in, our past, our evolution. So really, anthropology is a little bit of everything. You can apply it to any different kind of thing that you're interested in.
Biology literally means the science of life. Bio is life. And biology is actually a very dynamic field that touches on so many aspects of our life. A lot of people get this bad idea that it's a very dry science, and all biologists do is dissect things, and dissecting frogs is something that maybe I know they might be familiar with, but there's so much more to it. So when you talk about the science of life, that means all life. You can talk about animals like pets, so veterinary science. You can talk about us as human beings. We are animals as well. So all your healthcare, a lot of your healthcare research falls under the biology umbrella.
Chemistry is, I would say, is the study of molecules and how they interact, and also learning how to analyze them and use instrumental methods like infrared spectroscopy or NMR to see what's going on a molecular level.
What led you to study and major in communication?
I had a daughter about 3.5 years ago, and I knew I always wanted to come back to school. Didn't really have direction. When I came back, I really liked comm, and it really related to how I wanted to raise my daughter and the things that I saw in the outside world, how communication is really important. So it definitely stuck with me. I took women's studies because I was like, well, if I become a professor, I'll have more range that I can teach, so I'll have more classes, give me some job security, but I absolutely love women's studies. I've actually had a few professors suggest I double masters, which is a little scary, but I think I could do it, so we'll see.
Communication Sciences and Disorders is one major. It's usually a pre-professional degree. Graduates usually go on to, you can do a lot of things, but graduates often go on to to apply to graduate school in either speech pathology or audiology. So we learn about basic communication processes and how to treat communication disorders, and about language and how to treat language disorders.
Geology is basically the study of everything that goes on around you in nature. It encompasses a lot of different things. It overlaps with biology, chemistry, physics, It's basically the study of earthly processes, rocks, fossils, a lot of that, volcanoes, even a little bit of weather. It encompasses that. So it's very broad.
For me, philosophy is the combination between logic and rhetoric. So we study texts, we read a lot, we write a lot, and combining these two separate fields that don't seem to be too congruent in most other majors really allows for the communication of valid and good arguments, sound arguments, to be more fluid, I guess.
Yeah, and I would just say it's just involves critical thinking, and you analyze, you read a lot of text, and you just talk about what is this actually saying. So it's more like kind of digesting material and really trying to get to the core of what something's about.
Physics is literally, it's like everything, and it's the study of everything. It's I planned this. It's the reason you see the moon and the sun in the same sky, even though we're not supposed to. It's the reason the grass is green. It's the double rainbows. It's the way your car stays on the ground. And it's difficult and ridiculously hard, but once you understand it, it is phenomenally beautiful. It's everything. I mean, it's crowds. The way they move can be explained using thermodynamics on an atomic level. It's stars and how they work, and it's everything. It's awesome.
For me to explain what it entails to be a poli-sci major, I feel like I have to tell you a little bit why I wanted to become a poli-sci major. And I've always been surrounded by a family who's very into politics and who's very into international affairs and things like that. So that was something that I grew up always having an interest in. And poli-sci is all about finding patterns in those events that take place around the world. So we see the Cold War, and then we see the war in Syria and the war in Afghanistan, and it's all about trying to see if those wars have anything in common, and by doing that we try to avoid future wars. So it's all this exercise of finding patterns in individual behavior, in state behavior, in international behavior.
I think a lot of people think that psychology is just like mental disorders and like therapists who treat mental disorders, but really it's a lot more broad than that. It basically just kind of deals with all aspects of like human thinking and human emotion and behavior. But I mean, if you're interested in, you know, how people think and why they do things the way they do, then psychology would probably be really interesting to you.
Yeah, in psychology we learn a lot about like individual differences, but we also talk about like the human race as a whole and how we're alike and how we're different. We talk about like how childhood can affect your adolescence and your adulthood. We talk about gender differences and cultural differences. Like she said, we also talk about mental disorders and how to treat them. So it's just everything to do with human behavior and thinking and society and how social interactions influence behavior and thinking and all that stuff.
Well, I always say that being a Spanish major is only half learning the language, and the rest of it is it's humanities. It's a good old-fashioned liberal arts education. You learn about human culture, human life, history of Hispanic culture, Hispanic people, primarily through the literature, but also through, you know, culture oriented classes and that type of thing.
The best way to describe sociology is if you can imagine aliens watching humans from a spaceship outside of Earth, they're practicing sociology, because they're observing human activity, and that's what sociologists do. It's just the study of society and social relations, so that's the best way to describe it. And that can cover crime to families to poverty to anything. It's really the study of everything, but it's just called sociology because that's the name they came up with for it. So.
So what led you to your current field of study? How did you decide to major in math?
Oh, well, I kind of grew up around it because my dad's an engineer at Honeywell, and for whatever reason in high school, you know, I really enjoyed doing math. And I was originally a computer science major, but what's cool about college, I guess, that you can kind of add other ones on there because they overlap. So math kind of went hand in hand with computer science. So I just thought that, you know, I enjoyed it, might as well do that too.
I mean, what cannot you do? If you're interested in anthropology, just go ahead to the Amazon and find one of those tribes and put their language down in written form. Or if you're interested in linguistics, go to the Pacific Islands and discover a new language that has not been recorded yet. Or teach English anywhere in the world. Or go to Brussels and become a translator in the European Parliament. or get into a publishing house and edit some books, or become an author and write your own books and get somebody edit for you. English language is a language, and everything articulates through a language. So there are no boundaries there. You can do many things.
There's, the common belief that you can go into being a psychologist or a counselor. You could also be a professor if you want, a teacher. You could be a researcher. You could also work for like a business. Like there's a subfield called industrial organizational psychology, where you look at employees and how they work best together. There's a lot that you could do with it, really.
Yeah, it's important to know, though, that with just a bachelor's in psychology, you can't really do a lot of the things that people think of as a psychologist. You need to get a master's or a doctorate to be able to be a therapist or something like that. But with a bachelor's in psych, you really can do a lot of things that are not necessarily, psychology. I mean, to have a bachelor's degree, there's a lot of jobs you can just get with that. It's also, it looks good to employers sometimes because it shows that you have a knowledge of how people think and, people in general, which is very applicable to a lot of jobs. But yeah, if you want to, go on to be a therapist or a professor or something, you'll need to, go on to graduate school.
With a history degree, you can do so many different things. You can go on to grad school if you want to become a professor. You can go to a transition to teaching program to become a history teacher for secondary education. I know some people that are pursuing law. They want to become a lawyer, or other people, be a politician, or they could be a writer, a researcher. There's all different things you can do because history really teaches you all the different skills that you'll need for a lot of those different majors. You could also become a librarian as well.
Well, political science gives us actually a very wide gamut of options. A lot of people tend to think that if you're a poli-sci major, you have to go into government. You're going to work for a Democrat or a Republican, and that's all you're going to do, which is not the case. A lot of people actually go into the private sector. They can work as consultants. A lot of people go into the non-for-profit sector, which is what I'm interested in. So you can work for an international organization, non-governmental organization. So there's a lot of options. The field is very wide.
I've chosen production as my minor, and so that means I'm more interested in doing the editing and the filming, and I'm interested in journalism, and so I'm interning where I can grow those skills. But I know people who have interned at marketing departments. I know people who have interned at financial institutions. I know people who have interned at a mowing the lawn place. Like, there are 101 possibilities. And the great part about having a communication degree is that you can just say, I'm going to go use this skill that I have, and I'm going to go do it here.
There's a basic. You can go into teaching, you can go on to grad school and do research, you can work at different facilities like government research facilities, stuff like that. You can also go into engineering. I think about 40% of the people who graduate with a bachelor's in physics go into engineering jobs because it's nothing after you do physics. There's computer science. There are people who go into the financial world after a physics degree because you learn how to look at numbers in a meaningful way. And you can legitimately and reasonably do any career option you want with a physics degree.